We're back, we're live. Welcome to ThinkTech Global Network, Asia in Review, here on a given Wednesday. I'm Jay Fidell, and with me is Ehsan Ahrari, who joins us by Skype video from the Beltway in Alexandria, Virginia. He is Strategic Paradigms, a defense and foreign affairs consultancy in the Beltway in Alexandria. And he sends us email, he sends us all his writings and thoughts, and from time to time, hopefully more frequently than less frequently, we get to talk to him. Welcome back to the show, Ehsan.
Thanks, Jay.
Great to have you here. I have four things I want to ask you about, and they are based on your writings to me, and they are not necessarily in order of importance, but they're in order of how it strikes me, as a matter of interest. The first one is the pivot. I think it's a remarkable statement you made in an email recently, that President Obama is withdrawing from the pivot that was announced in the previous term of the administration, the pivot to Asia, and Hillary Clinton was building that on a daily basis, and now we are spending our diplomacy elsewhere. Can you explain that to our audience?
Yeah, I think, the Asia pivot would have necessitated us to focus on the Asia-Pacific region in a substantial way, because that is, after all, a very important region. You have world's two rising powers in that area, China and India. You have all kinds of economic activities are taking place. You have conflict between China and a number of China's neighbors in the South China Sea and East China Sea. You have all kinds of conflicts going there, and that's where the United States is most welcome, because our allied nations, overall the nations of East Asia, are very much concerned about the real purpose underlying China's military modernization. So we have every opportunity to be there, but what's happening is the strategic realities of the Middle East and West Asia, they are forcing us to stay focused on the Middle East. President Obama is finding the hard way that Middle East has its own mind, its own logic, whereby it will decide, not the lone superpower, whether it'll stay engaged or when it'll be taking its attention away from the Middle East and put on Asia. But of course, the impasse related to the government shutdown here, that caused a lot of problems for President Obama. So what we have in Asia Pacific is the allied nations are wondering what is going on with the United States. Are we abandoning our responsibilities, or are we abandoning our aspirations about remaining, the most dominant actor in the Asia Pacific region? They're kind of asking that question, with Secretary of State Kerry when he was there. But of course, Kerry cannot answer that question. Only President Obama could have answered that question, and he answered the question by not being there. But of course, Obama did not go to the APEC meeting because he did not want to go. He had some pressing responsibilities related to government shutdown. So all these, mishmash of all kinds of intricate forces are working against the interests of the United States to remain focused on its new strategy of Asia pivot. That's
it does suggest some questions. I would like to ask you about that very thought. I mean, one of the things you mentioned in your email was that this does have a negative effect on our position in Asia, and you mentioned that countries wonder why we've lost our focus there and we're focusing on somewhere else. But beyond wonderment, in the land of diplomacy, if you don't focus on a given place, then other diplomatic forces move in. You suggested this in your email. And so if we're not there, if we're not focused on the pivot, then China has an advantage, and China will move into the vacuum. So can you explain to our listeners what the downside might be, what the damage diplomatically might be if we're not focused the way we were before?
Well, the obvious damage right now is that because of President Obama's absence, President Xi of China became very, very visible, and he exploited that opportunity to the hilt. He talked to all kinds of people, he signed all kinds of contracts, he gave all kinds of assistance to Indonesia and other countries, and he made himself extremely visible, and the United States was not visible at all. So that becomes a problem. Of course, China being our major peer competitor. I'm not calling China an adversary or enemy or anything. I don't belong to that camp. But being a peer competitor, China is going to exploit every single opportunity it gets, especially when President of the United States is not going to be present at such an important occasion in the Asia Pacific area. It is going to exploit that, and China is already exploiting it. And China is exploiting it in different regions of the world. I'm sure you're gonna probably want me to talk about later on. But right now, I think we are hurting ourselves because of what's happening in the Middle East, or what's happening in West Asia, and so on and so forth, and because of the government-related impasse in Washington D.C., we are kind of hurting our aspirations to remain the most significant actor in the world.
Yes. Well, yes. Do you think it was a mistake that the president did not go to APEC this year?
Well, he was pretty much forced not to go. I'm sure he would have wanted to go, but that would have been bad politics for him to, when there was a deadlock in Washington, he could not have gone and hobnobbed with all those heads of states, and that would have been really bad, put him under bad light.
Yeah. Well,
and mind you, President Obama is in his second term. He's getting to a point where he has to constantly worried about his legacy. So his legacy is driving him more toward staying home and focusing on long-term issues, focusing on some strategic issues of domestic concern, and foreign policy issues are taking kind of a backseat right now. And of course, China is going to exploit every such opportunity, to its advantage. And I'm not going to blame China. I think unfortunately the events are not working from our purposes and from our perspectives.
Well, yeah, and you raised the point, and I think you and I discussed this the last time we spoke, and that is what effect do all these travails of government that we've had in the past few weeks, to what effect does that affect our diplomatic, foreign policy, our power in the world? What fallout has there been? Can you speak to that?
Well, you see, the main fallout is that whenever president of Indonesia or president of Philippines or any other president wants to see wants to find out what the United States is really thinking, he has to rely on Secretary of State Kerry or Hagel, Secretary of Defense. Of course, they are representatives of President Obama, but they cannot speak for the United States as authoritatively as President Obama would in his capacity as America's president. So that becomes a constant source of concern to these top leaders. Plus, we have to look at things from their perspective. They want to feel important too. They want to feel important in the sense that they want to have an opportunity to rub elbows with the U.S. president and express their concern, their national interests, and press them and get some sort of at least attention and verbal commitment from the U.S. president. See, neither Secretary Kerry nor Secretary Hagel is in a position to do that. So that becomes kind of a harmful thing from the perspective of America's strategic dominance in that region.
Yeah, but on the level of where the U.S. stands, I recall one piece of email you sent me, which was also very provocative. Said the century of America began with the end of the Second World War in 1945, and it ended in September 2001. That's less than a century, of course. And it suggests that our power was really never higher than it was right after World War II, and it has declined since. And I think what I get between the lines here is this affair in Washington over the cliff and the sequestration and the Obamacare argument. and the way Congress has conducted itself actually loses credibility and thus loses power for the United States as the world's leading nation. I wonder if you'd comment on that.
Well, you see, America's century was America's century because we were the number one economic power in the world. The post-World War II era was an era of America's leadership. We had the resources. We could absorb we could make all the payments for rebuilding the non-communist economic system, which we did, and didn't even think twice about it. Now, since 2008, the United States is part of this global economic meltdown, and we're having a tough time recovering from it. So the biggest problem is that, as Paul Kennedy many years ago argued, that the imperial overstretch the United States could have afforded during in the post World War II era, that overstretch is no longer within our means. We cannot afford that. A country which can afford that kind of overstretch is China, not the United States anymore. So either we'll have to work on rebuilding our economic muscles, because we have the political will. We have a fantastic reputation. America's leadership is believable. It's credible as far as the world is concerned, as far as Asia Pacific is concerned, as far as the Middle East is concerned. Our military is number one in the whole wide world. So we have everything going, but for the absence of economic might that we have had during the American century. So American century is not exactly over. I mean, I was only quoting somebody else when I talked about it. I said that I am favorably inclining toward that statement, but I haven't made up my mind on that. I think there's a lot of fight left in the United States. I think there's a lot of resolve left in the United States. But what we have to do is put all that fight and resolve in really rebuilding our economy, because the kind of original thinking the United States has had the capacity to do, that is still here. The internet is American, Twitter is American, you have Facebook is American. So all these ingenious ways of technological development, they're American. And we have had the capacity to translate that into military might, and for good ends, not to take over any country or anything else. So we have a good reputation. So, but the only thing that is not going for us, and when I say the only thing, I don't mean to belittle the significance of it, but absence of economic capacity is a serious problem. And if we cannot rebuild that, increasingly I'm beginning to think that we may not be able to rebuild it. That's where my pessimism is coming a little bit.
Okay, Ehsan, we're going to take a short break. This is ThinkTech Global Network with Asia in Review. We're talking to Ehsan Ahrari of Strategic Paradigms in Alexandria, Virginia. We're calling this show Asia and Beyond, because we're going to talk about all kinds of things in the world around foreign policy, foreign affairs, and we'll be right back. I'm Jay Fidell. Stay there. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidell, founder of ThinkTech Hawaii. We are a digital media nonprofit that covers things that matter to tech, energy, diversification, globalism, and progress for our state, the state of Hawaii. We broadcast on community television and on Oceanic Cable Channel 16. We also stream our shows and interviews live on the internet as both radio and video, and of course we post them here on YouTube. We collaborate with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association to present monthly luncheon programs on subjects of interest to the business community, and we write for the Honolulu Star Advertiser. ThinkTech works hard to raise public awareness in Hawaii. Check out our website, thinktechhawaii.com, and come to our YouTube channel, ThinkTech Hawaii. We hope you support our mission and that you like our work. I'm Jay Fidell. Mahalo. We're back, we're live, we're here with Ehsan Ahrari of Strategic Paradigms in Alexandria, Virginia, who consults in defense and foreign affairs matters here on ThinkTech Global Network, Asia in Review. And moving on to a point that we kind of discussed a little bit, before the break. That is the reputation of the United States these days, with the potential default on our national obligations a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to ask you also, with regard to the reputation of the country and its, through its reputation, its global power, how has that been affected in the past month or two by the surveillance issue, new revelations around NSA's eavesdropping? How has that affected our reputation in the global community, Ehsan?
Well, Jay, I think that event, that especially since the outbreak of news that the NSA was spying on personal telephones and tapping the personal telephones of German Chancellor and French President and so on and so forth, that became kind of a very, very mushy issue and a very confusing issue, and it has really it has affected negatively our reputation, in the sense that if our allies cannot trust us, then we have a problem. As a general matter about spying, countries spy on each other. That's a fact. No country can play holier than thou when it comes to spying on each other. But where the problem is when you tap the personal conversation of various heads of states. Brazilian president canceled the visit because she was upset that we were tapping her telephone, and so on and so forth. And in fact, a lot of these people are getting mad at us. So I think, in the final analysis, as big a deal as Snowden affair has been, it has definitely tarnished the reputation of NSA, and it has tarnished the reputation of American spying agencies. But tarnished the reputation may be, but it has not affected their capacity to do whatever they want to do. The American use of technology to kill terrorists, see, that remains, is very, very much intact, and NSA plays a very, very important role in that. So, with all this, sideshow of German Chancellor getting upset or French President getting upset, President Obama has to pay attention to that and stop all this nonsense about tapping their personal phones. But NSA is doing in terms of making sure the United States remains secure, I think on that issue, United States and our allies are on one mind. So, despite all the hoopla, despite all the emotionalism, I don't see that this particular event is going to cause any kind of a major damage for the United States or to the United States in terms of its interest anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. One other thing before we move on to the next important topic, and that is our relationship with Iran, which you've written and said so much about, is the notion of foreign policy as a place of focus. In our first discussion here today, we're talking about what happened to the pivot to Asia, and it's sort of, the discussion assumes that we can only be in one area of the world as a primary focus for foreign policy at a given time. And that must be a surprise to some people, because some people have assumed, maybe the public in general has assumed, that in Washington, in the State Department, there are desks, for every country, every jurisdiction, and there's somebody manning those desks, and our foreign policy operates on a parallel but coordinated basis with the whole world, all at the same time. But you're suggesting that we can only focus on one area at a time. Why can't we focus on everything? Why can't we have a global foreign policy every day?
Well, no, I think you make a very good point. And, I totally agree with you. I don't think that we have to choose between Middle East and Asia. We have to choose between South America or Africa. No, we don't have to choose. We have a very, very fantastic presence in both Middle East and in Asia Pacific area. We have military presence. We have a fantastic diplomatic presence. We have a fantastic reputation, especially in Asia. Now, since the Arab awakening, our reputation is somewhat questionable, somewhat on a shaky ground. But show me one country which has taken the place of America in terms of its capability to dominate the strategic affairs of the Middle East. Zero. No country is capable. Even when President Obama cancels or suspends Egypt's military assistance, Kerry is invited to the inner sanctum of Egypt, and he goes and lectures the military dictators about the promise of democracy and so on and so forth. So we are still playing somewhat of a role. So yeah, I don't think we have to decide that either we're going to be in Asia Pacific or we're going to be in the Middle East. I think we can do both. We can manage both areas. In the Asia Pacific, I think the most important role the United States has to be played is that it has to manage conflict between China and nations of East Asia, which are a whole bunch of them are our allies. And the United States can do that very, very well. I think the United States has a fantastic capacity to manage that conflict by persuading China to come to the negotiating table and have negotiations with these with its neighbors and resolving the conflict of South China Sea and East China Sea and so on and so forth.
Let me move on to Iran for a moment. You've written a lot about Iran, and certainly Iran has been in the news. It's a little confusing, and we'd like to get some direction from you about it. On the one hand, there's been a lot of signals that Iran would like to, bury the hatchet and have the olive branch, and that it took down the anti-U.S. billboards in Tehran. And then a few days later, there were riots burning American flags. So it's a mixed message coming out of Iran. There's certainly a benefit in negotiating nuclear issues instead of arguing about it. And it certainly helps, relieve tension to have that negotiation going on, have these messages of truce coming out of Iran. But is it real? The Israelis don't think it's real. They are afraid for their country and their lives, understandably. But in a completely objective way, can we make a decision on the credibility of Iran when it offers these olive branches?
Well, we don't have to. We have to live by Ronald Reagan's old adage. Trust but verify. So what we have to do, is go to the negotiating table and see what Iran is presenting as an olive branch, and examine the specifics of it, and make sure that Iran follows through. What's happening in Iran is the United States and Iran has so much bitter memories of bad attitude and lack of trust. And bitterness and so on and so forth, that it'll be very, very difficult for Iran to really stifle all those anti-American forces and start negotiating with the United States. In fact, as much as the Supreme Leader Khamenei has endorsed President Rouhani's olive branch, his new approach toward negotiations with the United States on the nuclear issues, I think the devil is in the detail. What Iran has to do is to come up with all kinds of specific suggestions and offer those as concession to the United States, and at the same time, the United States has to examine those and in turn offer counter concessions to Iran. So both these countries are feeling each other out. I think the last meeting went very well. Iran has given some indication that it's going to be negotiating, coming up with some specific proposals. But I think it'll be a while before we will reach a point where there's going to be kind of a grand bargain between the United States and Iran on which both sides will agree. In fact, I'm not even seeing the great future for the grand bargain. I think what we have to do is lower our expectations. Both sides has to lower their respective expectations and see what we can come up with and what we can agree on, because our main purpose is to make sure that Iran does not develop nuclear weapons, and Iran's goal is to make sure that it can assure the United States in a specific way, in a hard and concrete way, which I think Iranian government is inclining to do. Now, regarding burning American flag and all that, those kinds of posturing, it's going to take place in Iran for quite a while.
Well, it makes you wonder.
Posturing. We are all posturing in the United States. The U.S. Congress is pretty hard-nosed about not giving any concessions to Iran. So you see, these kinds of posturings they're sideshows. I'm not that much troubled by it. I just kind of look at it as part of reality.
It makes you wonder what drives all of this. I mean, for example, you have to look inside Iran and see the politics there, see the forces. Who's motivating the government to do what. I don't think he wakes up on a given morning and changes his mind. I think there are always going to be political forces. And sometimes in the Middle East, it's very hard to understand what those forces are, where they're coming from. But I wonder if you can comment on that. What is driving the government of Iran to be friendly with us, and at the same time, what is driving the people in the streets to burn American flags? And can those be reconciled? Which one will prevail?
I think the leadership will prevail. I think Khamenei's leadership, as long as the Supreme Leader Khamenei is endorsing these negotiations, as long as those negotiations are going to be producing results that he wants, by giving the kind of concession that he wants to offer, as long as that happens, Iran will clamp down hard on anybody who is going to protest against Iran's new approach toward the United States. We can be rest assured of that. Now, in the meantime, they're going to be hardliners are hardliners. They'll be Khamenei, I think, has made up his mind that he's going to be negotiating with us, and he has given so much room for President Rouhani to maneuver. But he has not abandoned his ship. He's not going to be abandoning his hardline position for good unless he sees something in return. So, depending upon what comes out in the next couple of rounds of negotiations between the United States and Iran, depending on those negotiations, I'm willing to see. I think I will be inclined to think that there is a chance that the United States and Iran can negotiate. Right now, they can negotiate, but like I said, the devil is in the detail. How much concessions Iran is willing to offer? See, mind you, Gage, I'm of the view that Iran is not going to abandon its nuclear program under any circumstances. What Iran is doing, I think, is pushing its program to a point whereby it doesn't have to prepare nuclear weapons. But if its back is pushed against the wall, it should be able to do it within a short period of time. I think when it reaches that point, it is going to stop. And I think it has not reached that point, and it will make sure that it will not reach that point because it knows that the United States is going to retaliate. So under these Israeli insistence and under Obama's warning and under Kerry's hard talk, sometimes soft talk. So I think that we're getting some kind of mixed messages. But one message is very clear to Iran, that it has to come up with some sort of a definite series of concessions, as a result of which he's going to convince the United States that is not going to prepare, head toward developing nuclear weapons. And I think Iran is quite willing to do that. How far it's going to go, depending upon how much it's going to get from the United States in return.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, Ehsan. This is Ehsan Ahrari of Strategic Paradigms, a consultancy in defense and foreign affairs matters in Alexandria, Virginia, an old friend of ThinkTech. And this is ThinkTech Global, a global network, here doing Asia in Review on a given Wednesday. I'm Jay Fidell. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back, and we're going to ask Ehsan about Russia's involvement in the changes in Iran negotiations, and how Russia is doing these days, especially with regard to Ed Snowden and the Snowden affair. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
We're live. This is ThinkTech Global Network, Asia in Review, Asia and Beyond. I'm Jay Fidell, and I'm with Ehsan Ahrari, who joins us by Skype video from Alexandria, Virginia. He's with Strategic Paradigms, a defense and foreign affairs consultancy in Alexandria. So, Ehsan, to carry on about Iran, the Russians were, involved in Iran. They still are, I'm sure, involved in Iran's strategies. How does what's going on with the current olive branch to the U.S. and the possibility of negotiations between Iran and the U.S., how does that affect Russia?
Well, I think Russia is putting its own pressure on Iran to be forthcoming. Yet Russia is also playing a role in making sure that no harsh measures are going to be passed by the UN Security Council. Russia is going to veto that, just like it threatened to veto any harsh measures against Syria. I think the Russia-Iran friendship is developing magnificently from Iran's point of view. Only as recently as yesterday or today, I saw a news item whereby Russia has insisted the United States start negotiating with Iran on the future of Syria. See, that is a major development from the perspective of Iran, because we have been refusing up until now to be involving Iran. In fact, Israelis are going to be very upset. But I have a feeling that if Russia were to insist on involving Iran in the negotiations in Syria, we'll have to allow, because things are not going well in Syria from our perspective, in the sense that the forces that we are supporting to oust Bashar Assad, they are a fighting bunch of group. They are not agreeing on anything. They only agree on the matter of removing Bashar Assad, but just because they don't agree about anything else, and just because they are not allowing the holding of this conference to discuss the modality of future of Syria, that is strengthening Iran's position, that's strengthening Russia's position, and that is weakening their own cause, and of course that's weakening America's position. So things are not really. Things are going beautifully from the perspective of Iran and Russia, involving Russia-Iran ties and involving Syria.
Well, Russia seems to be disagreeing with us, or working against us, or undermining our diplomatic position on so many things, including the Ed Snowden affair. Giving him what amounts to a place and a job. Sanctuary, if you will. What's the overarching strategy as far as Russia is concerned? They seem to be taking positions that are always adverse to the United States, never agreeing with us on anything.
Well, because they envision themselves, without saying so, they envision themselves as our peer competitors, even though they are not. They are not in the same league. But they consider themselves as a genuine contender to become another superpower, to regain the superpower status which the Soviet Union enjoyed.
Are they making progress?
No, absolutely not. I mean, Russia and China are not in the same league. China is making progress. China is in my opinion, is the superpower of the future. Russia is not. Russia has fifth-rated economy. Russia's industries and technologies are rotting. Russia has nuclear arsenal. Russia has some defense technology, some good stuff that it can sell to China, to India, and so on and so forth. But it has serious quality control problems. So Russia has all kinds of problems. Russia's sway, Russia's influence in Central Asia is not all-time high. I think China is undermining Russia's advantage there. But where Russia has advantage is in terms of Syria, because they did very clever thing. When President Obama warned that he's going to strike Bashar Assad's regime and weaken it with the purpose of ousting it, Russia immediately gave them the deal. Okay, we'll guarantee that Bashar Assad destroys all his weapons. So that was a major coup de grace on the part of Vladimir Putin. He came out looking very, very good in that regard. And the fact that President Obama was not there at the Asia Pacific meeting that we discussed earlier, that gave Putin to look good.
Left-right combination, yeah.
Yeah, so things are going well in that regard. But not in the real sense of the word, when you take a look at take a hard look at Russia's economy, Russia's overall prospects of Russia's emergence as a the dominant power. No, I'm not very optimistic about it.
Okay, well, let me move on to one area that we really need to cover, and that is Pakistan. One of the emails you sent me was made for the proposition that we are in a relationship with Pakistan where there is essentially no exit. And as I recall that you had a BBC interview on this. So tell us about the interview. Tell us about your feeling about the nature of our relationship with Pakistan and why it's a no-exit relationship.
Well, it's a no-exit relationship simply because as much as we want to break it, it's not breakable in the sense that we have very, very important interests in South Asia. We have very, very important strategic interests in Afghanistan. We are very much determined not to repeat what we did at the end of the defeat of the Soviet Union from Afghanistan. We packed up our tents and left Afghanistan, as a result of which, Taliban and Al-Qaeda, they all emerged as powerful forces, and Afghanistan became, the Vatican of global terrorism, as it were. And we don't want to use that. We don't want the reemergence of that scenario. So as much as we would love to get out of Afghanistan and make a clean break, we're not going to do it. In fact, Mr. Kerry, when he was in Afghanistan a couple of weeks ago, the purpose was to negotiate a status of force, a SOFA agreement with President Karzai. As I understand, Secretary of State Kerry succeeded in coming up with some sort of a solution to that issue. But what's happening is, because we don't want to leave Afghanistan, Pakistan becomes an extremely important actor, because we know damn well that if we were to get out of Afghanistan, Pakistan is going to do whatever the heck it wants to do, which is to turn Afghanistan into its stooge, and we certainly don't want to do that. So that is not in our interest. India is very much concerned about our leaving Afghanistan, because India does not want Pakistan to become a dominant power in that region, and we are certainly in sympathy with India. But at the same time, we are very much in sympathy with Pakistan in the sense that we want Pakistan to stabilize. We want Pakistan to become a stable country. We want Pakistan to become a place where Islamists and terrorists and murderers are eradicated. But we are very much disgruntled by the fact that Pakistan is playing this duplicitous role with us. That is, it tells us publicly that we're violating Pakistan's sovereignty when Obama sends drones to kill high-value targets, just like Hakimullah Masood, who was killed about 3-4 days ago. but in private, they say, yeah, go ahead and kill these people. So Pakistan is faced with the TTP. TTP has become a very powerful entity within Pakistan, which is threatening even the stability of Pakistan. Pakistani government wants to negotiate with it, but it's not interested in negotiating with Pakistan, and it knows that it has an upper hand. TTP, that is the terrorist group. So because we had our drone killed the TTP's leader, Pakistan got upset. They thought that it was a bad thing that we did. Timing was bad, and that became kind of another reason for Pakistan to get annoyed with us. But the biggest problem Pakistan has is the fact that it wants to negotiate with an entity which wants to eradicate Pakistan's existence. That is totally unheard of. You cannot negotiate with terrorists. Everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. But Pakistan is trying to live by that impossible proposition.
Yeah, they're trying to straddle the issues with the terrorists, and I certainly agree that you can't negotiate with that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, that scenario is very threatening. The scenario that the Taliban will become more and more powerful. Al Qaeda will be more powerful in that area. This other group, was it TTT? You said
TTP, right? TTP
will become more powerful, and it will threaten the government of Pakistan. And then you have all these nuclear weapons in Pakistan, weapons we gave them that other very terroristic forces will have access to. This could be a very bad scenario.
Yeah, no, they develop their own weapons. Unfortunately, or fortunately, from somebody's point of view, we did not give them those weapons. But we are very much concerned that those weapons should not fall in wrong hands.
So what do we do?
That has become a pretty nightmarish scenario, for us.
What do we do? What's the solution for the United States?
I think the solution is pretty slowly emerging. Which is that the United States is giving economic assistance to Pakistan, and it's insisting that it should negotiate, go ahead, do something with the TTP. And we certainly we're not going to say that do not negotiate, but we certainly know that you cannot negotiate with a terrorist entity. We are negotiating with the Taliban, but we're killing them at the same time. So we would like Pakistan to have a similar strategy, that is start killing them and then say, okay, we'll also negotiate with you. So once you negotiate from a position of power, as we are trying to do with the Taliban of Afghanistan, if Pakistan were to follow that strategy, I think the United States will be slightly more happy than it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, the original revelation back in 2001 was that the Taliban was all dug in and had training camps and global aspirations from Afghanistan. And then, in the early years of our war there, we seem to have brought that to an end. That the Taliban and the Al Qaeda crowd had been defused in Afghanistan. But now it sounds like they're back with a vengeance, and that Afghanistan and Pakistan are a place where they are growing strong. Is that true, and what can be done about that?
Yeah, I'll make a minor adjustment to your statement. The Taliban, there are two Talibans. One Taliban is of Pakistan, TTP. This is a recently formed entity. It's only maybe it has been in existence since 2001. The Taliban of Pakistan, Afghanistan, that's a separate entity. They use the same name. They have similar ideology, but they are not one organization. They are two different organizations. They have their minor differences and so on and so forth. Now the Taliban of Afghanistan, they have no global terrorist aspiration. They're only focused on regaining recapturing the power and ruling Afghanistan the way they want to rule. The Taliban of Pakistan, now that is an entity which has recently developed a globalist kind of a terrorist perspective, because one of the terrorists, he planted a bomb in downtown New York, Times Square, New York, and thank God the bomb did not explode. Otherwise, it would have killed a whole bunch of people. So since then, we have been targeting them just like we are targeting Al Qaeda. So TTP is definitely an entity of global aspirations. It's a terrorist group of global aspirations, but they are focused right now on Pakistan. But they are also extremely anti-American. So these are two different entities. Our aspiration is to. With the Taliban of Afghanistan, we would like to have some sort of a dialogue going between the Afghan government, the United States, and the Taliban of Afghanistan to come up with some sort of a rapprochement whereby some sort of a government is going to emerge, which is going to be supported by all sorts of forces of Afghanistan. So that's like finding, at least from where I sit, it's like trying to find the fountain of youth. I'm not sure there's such a thing, but we are trying to do that anyway. But negotiating with the Taliban of Pakistan on the part of Pakistani government, in my opinion, is is a big mistake. It's a fool's errand. I think what Pakistan ought to do is start striking them pretty hard, and once you start dismantling the apparatus, the structure, then say, okay, let's talk. Perhaps we have something to talk about. In the absence of that, there's not going to be any conversation because TTP is holding all the cards, or at least that's how they're interpreting, and I don't think they're wrong in their interpretation.
One last question, very briefly. Ehsan, you've been writing a book called The Islamic Challenge and the Great Powers. How is the book doing? You mentioned in one of your emails that Stanford Press was reviewing it, and some reviewers had issues with some of the things you were saying.
Yeah, I had those issues are genuine, but my thing is I'm a policy wonk, and when policy wonk tries to satisfy academicians, then it becomes a little complicated situation. So the two reviewers have given me, I think, fair review, fair critique, and in light of those reviews, and especially with the guidance given to me I have a fantastic editor, the director of press at Stanford University. Is a fantastic guy. He has given me some specific guidance, in the light of which I'm revising my.
Good, you're a flexible man. Well, the book's not out yet, though, and when it comes out, we want you to tell us so that we can check it out. Okay.
Okay, definitely.
That's
my pleasure.
Ehsan Ahrari, Strategic Paradigms in Alexandria, Virginia, a defense and foreign affairs consultancy. This is ThinkTech Global Network, Asia in Review, Asia and Beyond. I'm Jay Fidell. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again, Ehsan. I hope we'll catch up with you again in a couple of weeks. Aloha.
All right, aloha and mahalo.